I thought my husband would never leave no matter how much I mocked him or took him for granted. But when he finally left, I realized I'd pushed too far. I never thought my husband would actually leave me. I mean, he loved me, right? Loved me enough to put up with everything, never complain, and always be there no matter how badly I treated him. That's the thing about people like Jack, they're so consistent, so unwavering in their loyalty that you start to believe they'll never have the guts to walk away. My name's Lisa, and I guess I'm here to confess that I royally messed up. Jack and I had been married for 3 years, and honestly, I never imagined our life would end up like this. I suppose it all started because Jack's always been a bit of a pushover. God, I hate saying that, but it's true. He's the guy who'd get up early to bring me coffee, cancel his plans to cheer me up, and work long hours just to make sure I could stay home comfortably. And somewhere along the line, I started resenting him for it. He was too soft, too accommodating, too good. I didn't want good. I wanted excitement, passionate, someone who didn't just roll over every time I asked for something. My friends noticed too. They started pointing out how Jack would do anything I asked, how he was always the one picking up the slack, and I'd laugh it off, saying he just loved me too much. But somewhere along the line, the jokes turned meaner. I started mocking him to their faces, calling him weak, and even making fun of how he'd never stand up to me. My friends loved it. They said I deserved someone stronger, someone who'd challenge me. It got worse after I reconnected with some old college friends who moved to the area. Tina, especially, was the ringleader of the chaos. She loved telling me how I could do better than Jack. One night, after way too many drinks, I vented about how Jack let me be a stay-at-home wife despite us not having kids. Tina snorted and said, "You've got him wrapped around your finger. I bet you could tell him to jump off a cliff and he'd ask how high." Instead of defending him, I laughed. I laughed loud and proud like it was some kind of victory. And when I got home, hungover and miserable, Jack had breakfast ready. I couldn't even look him in the eyes. He asked how my night was, genuinely concerned, and I brushed him off with some vague answer. He didn't push for details, he never did. But it didn't stop there. Over the next few weeks, I went out more, always with Tina and the others. Jack never once told me not to. In fact, he gave me extra cash for drinks. I'd come home late, stumbling into bed, and Jack would just tuck me in without saying a word. I didn't realize it then, but I was pushing him, testing his limits. It's like I needed to see just how much he'd take before he finally snapped. The turning point came one night during a neighborhood barbecue. Jack was at the grill making sure everyone had food while I sat with Tina and the others. A few drinks in, and the conversation shifted to her husbands. Someone made a joke about how lucky I was to have a husband who'd do anything for me. Tipsy and feeling bold, I laughed and said, "Oh, Jack? Please, he's more of a servant than a husband." The girls howled with laughter, and I kept going, making fun of how Jack never said no to me. I even joked that he didn't have a backbone. That's when I saw it, Jack standing right there, spatula in hand, staring at me like I just slapped him across the face. I froze. Tina giggled and whispered, "Uh-oh." Jack didn't say a word. He just walked over to the table, looked me dead in the eyes, and said, "We need to talk." The room went silent. I tried to play it off like he was being dramatic, but he wasn't having it. Jack looked at me with a calm I'd never seen before and said, "I'm done. I'm done being treated like a joke. I'm done with this marriage. You can pack your stuff when we get home." I thought he was bluffing, but the way he walked away, steady, no looking back, I knew I'd finally gone too far. As Jack walked away from that barbecue, I couldn't move. My friends just stared, half stunned, half entertained. Tina leaned over and whispered, "He's just bluffing. He'll calm down." But I knew. Deep down, I knew that this wasn't just some dramatic outburst. This was Jack finally reaching his breaking point. I managed to mumble an excuse to the group and stumbled after him. By the time I got to our house, Jack was already inside, packing. I could hear drawers opening and closing and the clatter of hangers being yanked off the rods. Panic set in, and I rushed into the bedroom. "What are you doing?" I asked, trying to sound calm. Jack didn't look at me. He kept packing his things, methodically folding clothes and shoving them into his duffel bag. "Leaving," he said, his voice cold and detached. I tried to laugh it off. "Come on, Jack. You're not serious. It was just a joke." He stopped mid-fold, finally looking at me with an expression that made my stomach drop. "A joke? You humiliated me. You've been humiliating me for months, Lisa. Do you think I haven't noticed? You think I don't hear what you say behind my back? To your friends? You've treated me like a doormat for too long, and I'm done." I was stunned. Jack had never spoken to me like that before. He was always the calm one, the one who avoided conflict. Seeing him so firm and resolute made me realize how much I'd taken him for granted. I started crying, more out of fear than remorse. "I didn't mean it, Jack. I was just trying to impress them. You know how Tina and the others can be." I got carried away. He zipped up his bag and shook his head. "That's not an excuse, Lisa. You've been disrespecting me for a long time, and I kept forgiving you because I thought you'd eventually see how much I loved you. But love doesn't mean letting someone walk all over you. I'm not your servant, and I'm not your joke." I tried to grab his arm, but he pulled away. "Please, Jack, let's just talk about this. You can't just leave. We're married." His expression softened for just a moment. "We were married, Lisa. But I can't be with someone who treats me like I'm nothing. I deserve better." I begged him to stay, cried, and promised I'd change, but nothing worked. Jack was like a man who had finally broken free from his own chains. He wasn't angry, just determined. And that made it worse. When he finally walked out the door, I just collapsed on the bed, sobbing. I didn't understand how things had gotten so bad. Jack had always been there, always put up with my crap. I thought he'd never leave. I was wrong. That night, I stayed up, waiting for him to come back, convinced that once he calmed down, he'd realize I didn't mean any of it. But morning came, and he was still gone. I called his phone a dozen times, but he didn't answer. I even drove by his work, but his car wasn't there. Desperate, I went to Megan's house, one of Jack's few remaining friends. Megan opened the door and didn't even invite me in. She looked at me with so much disappointment it hurt. "He's here, but he doesn't want to see you," she said flatly. "Megan, please, just let me talk to him. I can fix this." She shook her head. "No, Lisa. You don't get it. You've been treating him like dirt for too long. I warned him to stand up to you ages ago, but he always defended you. He deserves better." I tried to explain, but Megan cut me off. "Go home, Lisa. Let him have some space. Maybe then you'll realize just how badly you messed up." I drove home, feeling like a ghost. How had I let it get this bad? I always thought Jack would be there, no matter how I treated him. I never thought he'd actually find the strength to walk away. Now I was terrified that I'd pushed him too far, that there was no coming back from this. I spent the next few days in a daze, barely eating, barely sleeping. Jack's absence was like a physical weight on my chest, pressing down harder with every hour that passed. I tried calling him dozens of times and left countless voicemails, but he never responded. My mind was spinning, replaying that moment at the barbecue over and over, the look on his face when he realized I'd been mocking him. Eventually, my mom called to check on me. She could tell something was wrong immediately. "Honey, what's going on?" she asked. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I broke down, telling her everything, how I'd taken Jack for granted, how I'd been mocking him with my friends, and how he'd finally had enough. To my surprise, Mom didn't comfort me. Instead, her voice turned sharp. "Lisa, I didn't raise you to treat someone like that. Jack is a good man. You knew that when you married him. If you wanted someone more exciting or daring, why didn't you say something instead of tearing him down?" Her words stung, but I knew she was right. I had turned into someone unrecognizable, bitter, selfish, and obsessed with impressing my so-called friends. I tried to explain that I didn't mean it, that I was just trying to fit in. Mom wasn't having it. "That's not an excuse. You humiliated your husband in front of everyone. Did you ever stop to think how that made him feel?" I couldn't answer. My mind flashed back to that moment, Jack standing there with hurt in his eyes, and I realized how badly I had crushed him. For years, he put up with my selfishness, trying to make me happy, never once standing up for himself. And I had mistaken that kindness for weakness. The next day, I decided to confront my so-called friends. I showed up at Tina's house unannounced. She opened the door, smirking. "Oh hey, how's the single life?" I glared at her. "You think this is funny? My husband just left me. I don't know where he is or if he'll ever come back. You encouraged me to treat him like garbage, and now he's gone." Tina rolled her eyes. "Come on, Lisa. He's just being dramatic. Guys like him always come crawling back. Just give it time." Her dismissive attitude made something snap inside me. "You're wrong. Jack's done. And I let you push me into treating him like a joke. Some friend you are." Tina's smile faltered. "Wow, you're really blaming me for your problems? You were the one making the jokes. Don't act like you're innocent now just because he finally got tired of your crap." I had no comeback. Tina was right. I couldn't put all the blame on her. I was the one who made those choices. I was the one who tore Jack down in front of everyone. I left Tina's place feeling more alone than ever. On the way home, I got a text from Megan. "Jack came by to pick up more stuff. He's staying here for now. Please respect his space." I broke down in tears. Jack wasn't just taking a break, he was moving on. That realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I had always believed he'd never leave, that no matter what I did, he would always be there. But I had been so wrong. Desperate, I tried writing Jack a letter, apologizing for everything. I told him how much I missed him, how sorry I was for belittling him, and how I would do anything to make it right. I slipped the letter into Megan's mailbox, praying he would read it. For the next few days, I waited, barely functioning. Then one evening, Megan called. My heart leaped. Maybe Jack wanted to talk. Instead, Megan's voice was cold. "Lisa, he read your letter. He doesn't want to respond. You need to let him go. He's made up his mind." I hung up and stared at the wall, numb. Jack was really gone. I had pushed him so far that he couldn't even bear to talk to me. I had turned the one person who loved me unconditionally into a stranger. Update. Weeks went by, and I didn't hear from Jack. I tried to keep myself busy, but every little thing reminded me of him. The way he used to hum while making breakfast, how he'd always call to check if I needed anything from the store. Now, the house was quiet, too quiet, and I hated it. One day, my dad sat me down. He'd heard bits and pieces from my mom and wanted to hear my side. I expected sympathy, but what I got was brutal honesty. "Lisa, you can't treat people like that and expect them to stick around. I raised you better. Jack's a good man. You lost him because you pushed him too far." Tears welled up, but Dad didn't soften. "You took him for granted. You let your friends influence you, and now you're facing the consequences. You need to figure out how to be a better person before you can even think about making amends." I knew he was right. I had spent so much time trying to impress people who didn't care about me that I'd lost sight of the one person who truly did. I spent the next few days reflecting on my choices, realizing that I had allowed my insecurities to destroy my marriage. I craved validation, and instead of finding it in myself or my relationship, I sought it from people who only cared about drama and chaos. A few days later, Megan called again. This time, her tone was less hostile. "Jack wanted me to tell you that he got your letter. He's not angry anymore, but he's not coming back either. He's found a new place and wants to move on." My heart sank. The finality of it hit me like a truck. "Did he say anything else?" I asked, barely able to speak. "No, he just wants to start fresh. He's seeing a therapist, trying to rebuild his self-esteem." Honestly, Lisa, I think you need to do the same. You need help, and not just to get Jack back, to figure out why you treated him the way you did. After that call, I finally acknowledged that I couldn't just snap my fingers and fix things. I had broken Jack's trust, and no amount of begging or apologizing would undo that. I started seeing a therapist, and it was like opening a floodgate of buried guilt and self-loathing. I had used Jack as a crutch and blamed him for being too nice while I was too selfish to appreciate it. The therapist made me confront why I needed to belittle him to feel important. It wasn't easy, and there were days I didn't want to face the truth. But I kept going, week after week, trying to untangle the mess I had made of my life. One evening, I went for a walk around the neighborhood and saw Jack from a distance. He was laughing with some neighbors, genuinely happy. I didn't dare approach him, but seeing him like that made me realize that letting him go was the only way I could truly show him I cared. I didn't deserve him, that much was clear. But maybe, if I kept working on myself, someday I'd be someone worthy of the love he used to give so freely. For now, I just had to accept that he was gone, and that this was a lesson I'd carry with me for the rest of my life. It's been a few months since Jack left, and I've come to terms with the reality that I'm now on my own. Therapy has been eye-opening, forcing me to dig deeper into my behavior. I learned that I used Jack's kindness as a safety net, allowing me to act out without fear of consequences. Deep down, I never truly believed he'd leave, and that sense of security made me reckless. One evening, I decided to go through my social media, deleting old photos and posts that no longer represented who I wanted to be. That's when I stumbled upon pictures from the barbecue, the last party before everything fell apart. In one of the photos, Jack is in the background, holding a plate of food, his face turned away from the camera. I zoomed in, realizing that even then, he looked disconnected, like he didn't belong there. Couldn't help but cry. How had I missed it? How had I been so blind to his unhappiness? I clicked through more photos and saw the same pattern. Jack was always on the outskirts, always in the background, while I soaked up attention from my friends. The realization hit me hard. I had pushed him out long before he left. A few days later, I saw Tina at the grocery store. I almost didn't recognize her. No makeup, tired eyes. She spotted me and gave a hesitant wave. Part of me wanted to ignore her, but I couldn't resist asking, "What happened to you?" She gave a bitter laugh. Turns out, being a party girl isn't as glamorous when your friends ditch you the moment you're not fun anymore. Most of them moved on to other social circles. I guess I wasn't as important as I thought. I didn't say anything, just nodded. Tina hesitated before speaking again. "I heard about you and Jack. I didn't think he'd actually leave. Guess we were both wrong about him." I wanted to snap at her and blame her for encouraging my behavior, but what was the point? Tina wasn't the one who made those choices, I was. We both stood there in awkward silence before she finally walked away. For the first time, I didn't feel anger or resentment, just pity. Tina was stuck in the same cycle, and I realized I didn't want to be like her anymore. That night, I sent Jack one final text. "I know you don't owe me anything, but I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for showing me how to be better, even if it meant leaving. I'm sorry I wasn't the person you deserved." I didn't expect a reply, and he didn't send one. That was okay. It wasn't about reconciliation, it was about closure. I needed to let go of the guilt and accept that I couldn't undo the past. All I could do was learn from it. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of peace. I wasn't healed, not completely, but I was getting there. I took a long walk through the neighborhood, breathing in the crisp morning air, trying to envision a future where I wasn't defined by my mistakes. When I got back home, I started making a list of things I wanted to change and goals I wanted to achieve. At the top of the list was one simple resolution: never take anyone's kindness for granted again. It was a small step, but it felt like progress. I know I still have a long way to go, but for the first time, I'm not wallowing in regret. I'm looking forward to slowly rebuilding my life. Maybe one day, I'll find love again. But this time, I'll know how to treat it with respect. I'll never make the mistake of belittling someone who cares about me just to impress people who don't. Update. The weeks turned into months, and I settled into a new routine. I found a part-time job at a local bakery, mostly to get out of the house and keep my mind occupied. My parents were supportive, but I could tell they were disappointed. It hurt to see the way they looked at me, like they were trying to figure out where they went wrong raising me. One Saturday morning, while I was at the bakery, a familiar face walked in, Megan. My stomach twisted into knots, and I almost turned to hide in the back, but she saw me before I could move. "Lisa," she said cautiously, as if unsure how to approach me. I wiped my hands on my apron and forced a smile. "Hey Megan, want a coffee?" I asked, trying to sound normal. She nodded, and I prepared her usual, a caramel latte. When I handed it over, she hesitated before speaking. "Jack's doing well, you know. He got promoted at work. He's been taking cooking classes. Says it helps him relax." The image of Jack in a cooking class made my heart ache. I always thought of him as the guy who would do anything to make me happy, but never for himself. Hearing that he was finding new passions without me was bittersweet. "That's good," I managed to say. "I'm glad he's doing well." Megan gave me a sad smile. "I know you didn't mean for it to end like this. Jack never spoke badly of you. Even when he was hurt, he always defended you. I guess he just couldn't take being treated like he didn't matter anymore." I bit my lip, trying to keep it together. "I know I messed up. I've been seeing a therapist, trying to figure out why I acted that way." She softened, her eyes full of empathy. "It's good you're working on yourself. I think Jack would be happy to hear that. But you know, Lisa, he's really moving on. He's dating someone new." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I forced a nod, keeping my voice steady. "I hope she treats him better than I did." Megan didn't linger. She just gave me a pat on the shoulder and left. I stood there for a moment, gripping the counter, fighting back the tears. Part of me wanted to scream, to run out and find Jack, tell him I'd changed, that I was better now, but I couldn't. I had to accept that Jack didn't owe me a second chance. That night, I lay in bed replaying Megan's words. Jack was moving on, finding happiness without me. It hurt, but deep down I knew he deserved it. I didn't resent him for it. I just hated that I hadn't been the person he needed when it mattered. The next morning, I woke up with a new resolve. Instead of focusing on the past, I needed to keep working on myself. Therapy was helping, but I needed to find more ways to build a life that didn't revolve around regret. I signed up for a community cooking class, thinking maybe I could find some of that peace that Jack had found. That first class was awkward, and I wasn't great at chopping vegetables without nicking my fingers, but it was a start. The instructor joked that cooking was about patience and care, and I couldn't help but think about Jack. How he always cooked for me without complaint. How he put his heart into everything he did. For the first time in a long time, I felt a hint of hope. Maybe I couldn't fix the past, but I could make sure I never treated someone like that again. I could learn to be patient, to be kinder, and to respect the love I'm given. It was a small step, but it was something. As the class wrapped up, the instructor asked us to share why we wanted to learn to cook. When it was my turn, I took a deep breath. "I want to learn to take care of myself," I said simply, "and maybe learn how to appreciate the people who do the same." It wasn't much, but it felt like a step in the right direction. Update. Months later, I found myself in a much different place. I was still at the bakery, but I'd started working more hours, and I was saving up to move out of my parents' place. The cooking classes had become a routine, something I looked forward to each week. Slowly, I was building a life that didn't revolve around Jack or the guilt I'd been carrying. One evening, after a particularly satisfying batch of homemade pasta, I checked my phone and saw a message from Megan. It was just a simple text. "Hope you're doing well." I hesitated before responding. "I'm trying. Thanks." A few minutes later, she replied, "Jack's really happy. I thought you'd want to know." I stared at the message, feeling a pang of sadness mixed with relief. Jack deserved happiness, and I was genuinely glad he had found it. I replied, "I'm glad. He deserves it." I didn't expect to feel so calm. There was no jealousy or bitterness, just a quiet acceptance that we had both moved on in our own ways. I thought back to how desperate I had been to hold on to something that was already broken, how I had tried to force Jack to forgive me without actually changing myself. It took losing him to realize that I had been selfish, that I had relied on his kindness without ever giving back. Now I was learning to stand on my own, and it felt good, liberating even. One Saturday afternoon, while I was wiping down the bakery counters, a familiar face walked in. It was Emma, the girl Megan had mentioned Jack was dating. I froze, unsure of what to do. She smiled politely and approached the counter. "Hi," she said. "You're Lisa, right?" I nodded, barely able to meet her eyes. "Yeah, can I help you?" She hesitated before speaking. "I just wanted to say thank you for letting him go. Jack's a really great guy, and I can tell he still cares about you, even if it's just as a friend." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I'm glad he's happy. I didn't treat him the way he deserved." Emma gave me a kind smile. We all make mistakes. Jack's moved on, but he doesn't hold any grudges. I think he just wants you to be okay, too. Tears pricked my eyes, but I forced a smile. I'm working on it. Really? She nodded, sensing that I needed space, and left without another word. As I watched her go, I realized that for the first time, I didn't feel threatened, angry, or defensive. I just felt grateful. That night, I sat down and wrote Jack a final message. Not to ask for him back, not to plead for forgiveness, just to let him know that I was happy for him. Thank you for everything. You deserved better, and I'm glad you found it. I'm working on being a better person, and I just wanted you to know that. I hope life treats you well. I didn't expect a reply, and I didn't need one. It wasn't about closure, it was about acceptance. I had spent so long clinging to the idea of fixing things that I hadn't realized I needed to fix myself first. Ultimately, I lost Jack because I didn't value him when I had him. But through that loss, I found something unexpected. A version of myself that could take responsibility, grow, and learn from the pain. It wasn't a happy ending, but it was a new beginning. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Hope you enjoyed this story as much as I do. Help this small channel grow by hitting that like button, subscribing, and sharing with your friends. Every bit of support means the world. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.